So I made a video a couple months ago reviewing Jet Lag the game, and in it I talked very briefly about the home game and playing it a couple times. And after playing it a couple more times and doing some more experimenting, I have a lot more to say. For a long time, people have watched the Jet Lag crew play games on a large scale and wanted to do it themselves. The Jet Lag home game is a little kit designed to help you do just that. It's styled like a game of hide and seek, although it has a lot more in common with something like Guess Who. One team will have some amount of time to take trains and buses to get to a hiding spot. Then the seekers will ask them questions over text in order to narrow down where they're hiding. Things like how far you are from them, photos of things, and so forth. The hiders will draw cards giving them time bonuses or various curses they can put on their opponents, forcing them to do challenges. Eventually, the seekers will find the hiders and they can switch off, and whoever hides the longest wins. Something crucial to mention is that they've played this exact game in the show, twice and soon to be thrice. So it is partially designed for that. Like I said in the last video, we've played this in the Chicago area in the small variant of the game. And after a couple more rounds of the home game, we've soured on it a bit. To demonstrate the issues, I'm going to invent something called the Jade test. I have several friends who I'm going to combine and represent here as the character Jade Harley from Homestuck. Jade is a friend of mine. I don't see Jade all that often in person, although we talk a lot online. When we do hang out, we like to walk around and be active, ride trains, go shopping, explore the city. Jade is not a Jet Lag fan, but Jade is up for a fun game, is a good sport, would enjoy a fun experience. I would never invite Jade to play hide and seek the home game with me. It fails the Jade test, and here are several reasons why. And just as a heads up, there's going to be spoilers for seasons 9 and 12 of Jet Lag. 1. Time variance. To do a thing like this, it's nice to know how long it will take, which for hide and seek is always up in the air. And in fact, there's kind of no cap on how long it could take to fully finish. You might be cursed to find a bug and never find one. In Season 9, time ran out on the third day while Adam was running. He lasted for 10 hours and Sam and Ben conceded to him. But even if there was another day, I doubt Sam and Ben could have found him. They thought he couldn't be in the place where he was and he hadn't even used his curses yet. So he might have hid for like another week. You of course will have a hard limit on time when the game has to stop, but chances are if the game goes to time, nobody's having fun. I would feel really awkward asking Jade to play a 4 to 8 hour game, with no guarantees. 2. Limited areas. There just aren't that many places in Chicago within a quarter mile of a train station. The seekers can go anywhere, but probably won't. You can add custom zones, but these zones aren't on train lines, so they're harder to get to, so the hider probably won't go there. I think the honest solution is allowing basically anywhere to serve as a zone, but still potential spots are limited. Another factor is that not every zone is entirely hospitable. For some reason, certain L stations have nothing within a quarter mile of them, but this is probably less of an issue in a country with actual third spaces. I'd feel bad subjecting Jade to these kinds of zones, and it would be hard to explain why certain areas don't work. It's upsetting because the pitch of this game should be, hey, let's go explore the city while we play a game, but it doesn't really live up to that. Most of our games saw us covering a very thin slice of the map. 3. Rules nightmare. This game is too complicated. I'm sorry. You need a lot of equipment, a lot of things to keep in mind, a lot of edge cases, not all of which are fully covered by the rules. It would be pretty hard to teach this to someone who's never watched Jet Lag, and if someone has seen it, you still have to teach how to measure distances, or how to find your nearest thing, or the subtleties of how you can take certain photos. I'd argue you pretty much need someone on both teams who's fully read the rulebook. Poor Jade isn't going to do well with this. If she's on her own, she's screwed, and if she's with someone, they're probably going to be making a lot of the decisions. The one thing I cannot wrap my head around is the cost on these curses. Each curse has its own unique cost listed at the bottom. This is not only a number of cards to discard, but it can be certain kinds of cards or some other thing you have to do. I think this is in here to balance the cost, but I don't know if it's possible or even desirable to do that. There's no way they playtested this enough to decide that this card is balanced if and only if you have to discard a power-up to play it. It's just another thing to remember. But my least favorite thing is the formatting. You see, sometimes the cost is based into the text box of the card, like this rock tower curse where you build a rock tower, and then they have to build a higher tower. Here the cost just says, build a rock tower, and that doesn't change anything about the card. But in a card like Curse of the Bridge Troll, the cost does change how the card works, because you can only play it if you're at least a mile from them. I cannot for the life of me understand why they didn't just format the curse like this, with everything up front. 4. Mistakes. And I'm not just complaining about this abstractly. One time, the other team played this curse on us while we were within a mile of them. Maybe I never said it in an explanation, or they just never registered it, but they were unaware that curses had costs you always had to read. It was about an hour before we clarified this. They were kind enough to realize we were going the wrong way and call us. You might say, how hard can it be to read a card? To which I'd say, how heavy is one piece of straw? These issues compound, and when there's a mistake like this, the consequences are a lot bigger than your typical board game. I start thinking about strangling people when they give me the wrong number of pegs in Mastermind. When this happened, I felt nothing but a simmering hatred, not for my opponents, but the designers of the game. A hatred I would channel into making 2 YouTube videos, where I give their shows and products somewhat mixed reviews, in order to destroy them. Not only did this waste an hour, it pretty much wasted the whole game, because now we can't really know who would have won. And in fact, in every game we played, something like this happened, where someone made a mistake, or accidentally saw the opponent's location, or time ran out. Of course, these things are our fault, but I just wish the designers prioritized simplicity more. If your games have gone off without any hiccups, that's great for you. Maybe we're just unlucky or not that smart, but still, I think this should have been accounted for. If a major mistake happened on a game with Jade, especially if she caused it, I'd feel terrible. And going off of past games, that's not unlikely. 5. Hidden information. This is pretty much the central problem all the other problems emanate from. Hidden information means progress is very non-linear. You might spend some time in some questions in a game and get basically nowhere. Or you might see one thing that immediately narrows it down to one station, ending things immediately. This never happened, but the threat of it kept the spaces we went to limited. I'm pretty sure if I saw a photo from anywhere near my neighborhood, I'd pinpoint it right away. But I can't say for sure because no one wanted to risk it. This also meant we never hid near where we've hid previously, which led to fewer and fewer options. If we played again today, I don't know where we'd hide. The rules issues are especially compounded by this. The rulebook encourages players to clarify as much as possible, but that's not so easy when you have to avoid giving away your spot. Even if the other team had noticed right away, they still would have revealed their location by taking back the troll card. Finally, there's an imbalance between these two roles that I'm tired of. Hiding is something similar to picking a word in Hangman, in that you're really playing a secondary passive role. Once you've hidden, you're making very few important decisions. We can see in Season 12 that the game wasn't decided because the hider did a good job, but because the seekers made a huge mistake. The 2 most common complaints from my playgroup were that the games went too long, and that there weren't enough curses. Which seems contradictory, but I think what they're saying is this game is a lot of time sitting around. At certain points while hiding, I honestly didn't want to try that hard, or I was even hoping that they'd catch me sooner. It might be really good for you in the game to trick the seekers into going the wrong way, but in reality, it just means you're sitting around for longer and you're making the other team have a bad time. A sad fact about this game is that if the hider is winning, nobody's having fun. Seeking, unfortunately, fell into a regular pattern of the same couple questions. You always have to ask building from train station first. We never asked most of the matching or measuring questions, we just relied on the same few radars and thermometers. This might be a problem with the small game, but I feel like upping the size would compound other problems. Can you imagine someone makes a mistake in your game where it takes 3.5 hours for someone to hide? Seeking comes with more strategy than hiding, and it's the most excitement I've had during the game, but it can also be really frustrating at times. It's good to have B-roll, right, in general. Now, you might say I'm criticizing the game unfairly, and you're right. Look, I said it in my first video.
The game has probably been optimized for watching someone play a large game.
Most issues I've mentioned don't matter in this context. The guys have multiple days to play. I don't. They play in parts of the world a lot bigger than central and northern Chicago, with more options of places to hide. They wrote the rules, so they know them by heart. And finally, they can edit out all that downtime, and they probably prefer a less eventful game so the videos aren't too chaotic. The home game is made specifically for fans of Jetlag, who want to play the same game as them. It's not really for Jade. I'm glad it exists for those people, but for me, I'm not sure I'll play it again. Look, if you want an experience you can share with the Jade in your life, you should do what I did recently. Instead of hide and seek, play a region claiming game like Seasons 4 and 13. Go on Google Maps and draw a bunch of neighborhoods. I recommend making them kind of small. Try to make at least 20. Average around like half a square mile. Then come up with some challenges you could do in your city. I'd suggest making them all decently easy and favor things that are sort of scavenger honey that make you go places. Then you could print these on cards and play them like Battle for America, or what I'd recommend is having 5 or so challenges be available to both teams at the same time, like Arctic Escape. Then you could just set a hard limit on game time where the most neighborhoods claimed wins. We've only played this game once, but it went a lot better. It was honestly super close for most of the game. We made the mistake of using Apple Notes to keep track of the challenges, which was pretty buggy. I had an additional rule which made things a little too complicated that I've now cut for the future. It had a much higher density of both travel and challenges, which was the most fun part of hide and seek. Designing and coming up with stuff was fun for me, and since both teams have the same challenges, balancing isn't super important. It was much more of a quick burst 4-hour experience than hide and seek, and that means it probably would kind of suck to film because there was hardly any downtime to do bits. But that's okay. Sometimes things are more fun to watch than play, and vice versa. We had fewer issues with rules, and since you can clarify issues right away, and there's less going on. And there's no hidden information. You can see each other's location. Now I can see why they made hide and seek. They wanted to make a game you can play anywhere without doing any designing yourself. And they wanted the experience to do well on camera. They clearly couldn't have sold something like what I made, and I enjoyed the experience of hide and seek for what it was, but it's not something I'm going to revisit. If you're a Jetlag fan, I'm sure you'd enjoy designing something like this, and I'd recommend you to try it at some point and experiment with different kinds of games and see how it compares. If you want to play the version I designed in Chicago, I'll put a link in the description to the map and challenges we used. If you do, let me know how it goes, or if you enjoyed the home game more than me, feel free to tell me that. Anyways, thanks for watching, like, comment, subscribe, etc. Thank you for all the support on the first video. Glad I could be a beacon of Jetlag fandom for a time. Thank you.